Classification of animals and plants and how a classification system works. Last week we spent some time looking at classifying vertebrates, and this weekend we're going to have a look at how to classify invertebrates, specifically arthropods. We're going to use the physical characteristics of an arthropod to determine what order and class it belongs to. So here is the classification structure for the arthropod phylum. You'll notice that we begin with the kingdom Animalia and skip straight down to the phylum of Arthropoda. From there, we're going to look at the physical characteristics of an animal to determine how to subcategorize it. So here we can see that an arthropod is an animal with a segmented body, segmented legs, and other appendages, and an external or exoskeleton, as well as soft internal organs. So right here we know the difference between an arthropod and a vertebrate is that external skeleton instead of an internal bone structure. So what I'd like to do is use this classification chart, and we can examine the key characteristics of this particular species to classify it and to therefore learn how to use the classification chart. So we are going to classify the ant. So take a good look at the ant, recognize the different body parts that it has, potentially count the legs, look at antennae, even examine the eyes. Now I'm going to walk you through how we would classify the ant. We certainly know already that it belongs in the kingdom Animalia, and I've told you that it belongs in the phylum of Arthropoda, but you can see that it does indeed belong here because it does have a segmented body. The body is broken down into different parts. It has legs that are also segmented. And what you may not be able to see, but certainly if you touched, you would know that it has an external skeleton. Now we have to decide, though, if it should belong to the subphylum of Chelicerata or the subphylum of Mandibulata. So let's look at the physical characteristics. The Chelicerata subphylum would mean that it has no antennae, mouth parts that consist of fangs or pincers, and two main body segments. However, if we were to move over and look at the subphylum of Mandibulata, we would see that it would need to have one or two pairs of antennae and mouth parts consisting of mandibles adapted to chewing or sucking. So let's look at our ant. Well, I notice if I look at the two different subphylums, one of the easiest characteristics to distinguish is the presence of antennae. The ant does have antennae, which means we are now looking at this side of the classification chart in the subphylum of Mandibulata. So I can discount anything on the other side. I now need to look under the class. So would it be a crustacea, a chilopoda, or an insecta? Well, a crustacea would have two pairs of antennae and at least 5 pairs of leg-like appendages. We do not have 5 pairs of leg-like appendages, and we only have 1 pair of antennae, so it certainly is not a crustacea. A chilopoda would be a long and worm-like structure with 1 pair of legs, and again already I know that the ant has more than that. So we must be under insecta. Let's check that out. 1 pair of antennae, check. 6 legs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, check. And 3 body parts, a head, a body, and a tail structure. Check. Usually they have wings. This ant doesn't, but it says usually, not always. So last of all, we need to look under the order. Would this be an Undonata or a Coleoptera? And I'm probably as bad as you are at pronouncing these things. So to be an Undonata, it would have large compound eyes and 4 clear wings as well as a long abdomen. To be a Coleoptera, it would have hard, leathery front wings, cover membranous, softer hind wings, and chewing mouthparts. Well, this doesn't have wings at all. But if we look at the remaining criteria, we probably need to examine the eyes. Because yes, it does have a long abdomen. I can't really see its mouth, but if I look at its eyes and maybe do a Google search, those are indeed compound eyes. So the ant would belong here. Your task is now to put each arthropod into the correct classification section at the bottom of our classification chart. Here are the arthropods that I'd like you to try and classify. Just as we did with the ant, begin at the top and work your way down the chart and place it at the bottom of the classification chart under the correct order, just as I've done with the ant here. Once you're finished with all of these, then find your own species online, grab a picture, one that you don't really know, and try to use the classification key to identify it for practice. You will need to navigate to this Prezi, make a copy of it, and then edit your Prezi. When you're finished, please share your Prezi with me by sending me the link.